totally up to you.
Thanks, Alex. I'm Nathan from SNL International. I just wanted to talk quickly about who we are. First off, thank you for joining us today for the Palo Alto Nebula webinar. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Welcome to both our current customers and the customers that we'll gain in 2022. I just wanted to talk a little bit about who we are. SNL International is a Southern California-based IT consulting and implementation group here in Los Angeles. We were founded in the 90s. So we've been around quite a while. Yes, again, you heard that right, the 90s. But our firm is known for all of its expertise within IT. The 2 decades that we've been in business, we're able to help clients of all scales and sizes. Our secret sauce is in our engineering team, both in their size and their various disciplines. You know, I'm one of the main sales guys here, but really, if you're able to get in contact and take a call with our engineers, they know everything that they should. Let me put it that way. Yes, and we basically founded our business on 3. Alex, actually, can I have the previous slide, please? Our firm really works on 3 pillars, which is going to be this systems and network infrastructure, data security, and data protection. So again, anything within infrastructure that's going to make your network system tick. We can go over various solutions and help implement that. Really where we strive the best is going to be in our data security. So it is your data. We hope that we can do our best to help you retain it and that it doesn't go anywhere. But in that particular case, that it has moved and you need to get back online, that's where our data protection team comes into play. So we're going to do our best to keep you online and rebooted with all the data that you have. Alex, next slide, please. So here at SNL, we'll do our best to help our customers with customized solutions based on their size and scale and how many users that they have in their environment. We don't just suggest one thing and everyone gets the same solution and move on. We do our best to make a comprehensive approach to what works best at your firm. We give comprehensive updates, like we've spent the time today to meet here with Alex to go over what's new with Palo Alto and their Nebula OS. Adaptive support, so you can always reach out to someone within our sales team first, and then if there's more talk that needs to be done, we will schedule a call with someone within a vendor or with someone with our engineering team. Again, our expertise is really going to be in the longevity of our company here at SNL. Most of our engineering staff has been there over a decade, you know, the idea of about 15 years. So with the current environment, things are changing day to day, you know, month to month, year to year. So I think that really does tell the story well that we've retained a lot of our staff for well over a decade, and the relationships that we've built with our, our clients. You know, we treat the 20 or 50 user client just with the 5,000 user client, and do our best to give a good hands-on experience and follow up. You know, it isn't something we just sell you a solution, bolt it on, and then wave goodbye. We will do our best to stay in touch and help you grow. And then, of course, kind of our responsiveness. We will get in contact with you after the call today to follow up to see if you have any questions or concerns, or if anything else needs to be discussed after the webinar. But I think that's about it. Thank you, and I'll give it over to Alex.
Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate it. Yeah, I love our friends at SNL International, and you know, as I go on the presentation today, I'm going to specifically be talking about our firewalls, kind of our newer hardware, our newer operating systems within those firewalls. But if you didn't know, Palo Alto has a whole breadth of a portfolio of different technology, whether it be for your security operations teams, your cloud deployments, firewall as a service, or VPN replacement projects, and we even have consulting services. So please reach out to your SNL International representatives, see if there's anything you could learn more about. I'd love to talk a little bit more about any of those other offerings that we have as well. But with that, today I do want to talk about our latest update being Nebula. So that's our new operating system. And with that and some of the processing power and technology associated with it, we also have some new hardware firewalls to talk to, okay? So I'm going to start right there. As Heidi mentioned, feel free to add questions in the chat. I might not see them, but she can stop me, or otherwise, just hold them to the end, and I'm happy to go over those. So with that, I definitely want to show off. Here's where the hardware currently stands. So, if you're not familiar, we have the PA series of firewalls available from Palo Alto Networks. You can kind of see how they're sized between the smaller branches and remote locations up to the larger data centers. So we recently just announced the addition of the 3400 series and 5400 series for larger deployments. Those are kind of replacing the 3200 and 5200 series. If you're building a network perimeter or campus deployment, this is a great kind of tool to consider. But I'm going to spend the majority of today focusing on the PA400 because it is by far our most cost-effective solution. And as you're going to see, for an entry-level firewall, it is incredibly powerful and can provide you enterprise-class security at branch locations, small offices or businesses, whatever kind of the need for in that way. And there's a lot of cool technology associated with it. So here's just kind of a map. You may have remembered the PA220. You can already kind of see how we've jumped up in the speeds and feeds when it comes to the PA400 series. And if you remember our 3200 series, this PA460, keep in mind, this is our entry-level firewall, is kind of on par in terms of throughput as our 3200 series was, like our 3220. So pretty amazing considering we're basically reshaping our portfolio where our entry-level firewall is 10 times faster, 10 times better performance through threat and SSL decryption as our original PA220 was, right? It boots up to 5 times faster, and there's some other cool functionalities associated with it. So just wanted to make sure everyone understood kind of where the current level of our hardware sits and how these 4 firewalls we've introduced, the PA400s, are allowing organizations to stop the latest threats effectively and efficiently and work well for greater security performance with our new updates to our PAN-OS. So for the PA400s, just want to kind of mention a few things. You can deploy this on a desktop form factor, but you can also get a rack if you want to put it or mount it. It's got redundant power supplies for high resiliency, at least these top 3 level ones do, right? It's noiseless, so it could sit on your desk. It can boot up to 5 times faster, as I already mentioned, to our 220. Has 10 times higher performance in terms of throughput. When I was talking about the PA220, our old entry-level model. And, it's available with a couple other cool features as well that I'm about to get into. But you can really see how this is going to drop the TCO, right? This is sort of in relation to how some of our competitors have tried to keep up with us. We're offering Palo Alto Networks performance at our competitors' lower prices, and that's what's really great about the 400 series. And as I already kind of mentioned, the throughput in some of the higher models here in 460 are comparable to that of our earlier, 3rd generation 3220 firewalls. So 4th generation is seeing a lot more uptick in power. Now, I want to point out a few things about this. We already mentioned the performance. We already, I'll touch on IoT security and some of the functionality that comes with that. But one of the big things is this zero-touch provisioning. So because of Panorama, because of some of the management features we've built into our firewalls, if you're an organization that is managing hundreds of branches or offices, you can configure it so you ship fully managed, fully configured firewalls to branch locations. As soon as they turn it on, it connects to that Panorama instance, and it's good to go. You already have your security solution in place. So that's an awesome feature, the zero-touch provisioning that's available on these PA400s, just to simplify operations, lower that TCO, and get those faster boot times that we talked about. And I always like to point out, when you're saving as much time and not having the hit to performance you might have with a cheaper firewall, these things pay for themselves immediately. And that's where the kind of the TCO comes in, because if you went with a competitor's firewall or something more comparable to one of our older models that doesn't have the functionality, the throughput, the processing power that some of these devices do, you're going to pay for it in other ways with just headaches from your employees, maybe shortcuts to get around some of the different security features like decryption or decompression that are really necessary for securing an environment. And as a result, you're going to pay for it one way or another. So definitely have a conversation with SNL because these PA400 devices are really incredible. And I'm going to show why as I kind of get into how we as an organization have reshaped the next generation firewall to be ML powered and capable of deep learning. Again, in case you were curious, just some information on the different speeds and feeds. The app ID and the threat prevention are the two throughputs listed here. The one being our firewall, good to go, leveraging its ability to see applications with app ID, user ID, device ID, context ID, merely leveraging all of the capabilities of our SP3 architecture, right? The way our firewalls are just kind of constructed differently. And then that threat prevent number there at the bottom, that's with one or all of our security services turned on. So if you need to leverage threat prevention or wildfire, which is for protecting against unknown and malware detection kind of capabilities, URL filtering, DNS security, that number is not going to change because of the way Palo Alto Networks firewalls are built to pass through the architecture, right? Through the management plane, through the data plane, which are maintained separately, to have all of those security profiles and capabilities added on at once. So just want to make sure you kind of understand the difference and the performance uptick between our entry-level firewalls, because that's going to kind of show you where we've gone in a way that's going to allow you to defend against all the attacks out there with Palo Alto Networks. Again, just more information about the speeds and feeds and so on and so forth. So I can send this stuff out to anyone who's interested, as you kind of try to figure out, which devices works best for you. I did just want to point out one thing. You might see the 820 and 850 or 800 series. So we're maintaining those firewalls, even though they're kind of more akin to a legacy, because they are necessary if you're an organization that requires SFP or SFP plus ports. That's just the main difference there. So you might get confused if you see the throughput that isn't exactly matching the throughput in some of these newer firewalls. But just keep in mind that it's a use case specific for an organization that might need an SFP or SFP plus port. Figured I'd just throw this out here in terms of competitive positioning. We trounce Fortinet when it comes to performance. And one of the main reasons because of that is how our firewalls are constructed. And one thing to keep in mind is that because we maintain a separate management plane from a data plane, you can always access the management console of your firewalls, of your organization. It's what allows us to have the next level performance and compute power and take care of some of the densities that are out there with your network. So thank you for bearing with me on the hardware stuff. Definitely, got a lot of resources online if you are interested in that. But I want to get into the meat of today's conversation, which is our announcement of PAN-OS 10.2 Nebula. So a few years ago, right, we sort of pioneered the ML-powered next-generation firewall, right? The ability to take what used to be required for offline analysis to find unknown threats in 0 days and do so within a static analysis that was done inline on the next-generation firewall. And it's what allowed us to prevent up to 95% of unknown threats. Nebula is our next step forward, right? It's going to allow us to take in a larger data set and determine what is going on within your network. Because of the increased compute power, the increased processing speed, and some of the technology advancements with 10.2 and Nebula, we've been able to beef up some of our cloud-delivered security services. So if you're not aware, Palo Alto Networks offers its firewall, its operating system with its capabilities built in like app ID, user ID, device ID. And then for additional security services, right, when you get to not like blocking or allowing traffic, but allowing but scanning, that's when we get into these things such as threat prevention, stopping known threats, URL and DNS security, securing those avenues from threats, right, URL filtering, threats associated with DNS traffic, IoT security, the ability of a firewall to see everything that's on your network, understand all of the devices out there, the things that you can't install an agent on, right? And then we also have a new update, and that is AIOps. I won't get into what all of these things are, but I just want to make sure you're aware that all of these things have seen a significant facelift from our previous technology because of the increase in compute power that's afforded to us with Nebula and our new 4th generation hardware. So I want to start by kind of talking about something I already mentioned a little bit, right? You know, originally, this is kind of how next generation firewalls worked, right? In the beginning, you had a known threat, you went to your firewall, signatures were embedded into that firewall so it could stop known threats and protect them in real time. But for 0 days, for unknown threats, for malware that we hadn't seen traverse a network, firewalls had to rely on offline analysis, right? They had to do deep learning, static analysis, be able to analyze it offline, which unfortunately means that some people get hit, right? Whether it be sandboxing or bare metal analysis or whatever being leveraged, someone had to fall victim to the 0 day, right? The threat that hadn't gotten anybody else, which is tough, right? As we've kind of updated our technology, and this is where we were like 2 years ago, right? We had the ability to take static analysis and do that inline on the next generation firewall. So static uses a set of data points to identify and understand what's going on, right? That was the analysis that was originally being taken offline, and we were able to package and deliver it into the firewall. It's done as someone goes through in the same kind of processing as their network traffic or the other kind of security components that we've talked about, and it allowed Palo Alto Networks to be the first next-gen firewall to prevent up to 95% unknown threat variants in real time. So now, where are we, right? The landscape has changed. Attackers are much more advanced. We're seeing, C2 traffic, phishing attacks, hack tools, lots of exfiltration as a result, right? And even still with that online kind of, offline analysis for deep learning, for the complex structures and algorithms, it's still meaning that some people are going to get hit with 0 days, right? Those 5%. There's, new C2 traffic that's going to be taken care of. And that static analysis might take anywhere from 30 minutes to 48 hours to deliver verdicts and signature-based algorithms to all of the network security tools out there, right? Being able to stop all of them. But because of all these increases in attacks, it's not good enough. And that's where we've kind of come today. Through 3 things, we have built out a system where we can now run deep learning on live traffic, right? So even with our ML-powered next-generation firewalls, deep learning that takes in a much larger data set to determine what is going on and have the compute functionality that are similar to a human brain, that was taking a lot longer and now is no longer being done offline. It can be done inline, which gives us this kind of technology that we're going to. So this is how we're staying ahead of our competitors. We were ahead of them a few years ago. We introduced ML-powered next-generation firewalls, and now we're doing this, right? We're sending all of the executables piece to a simulated environment, and we're doing so quickly. So I want to make sure you kind of understand this is 3 years in the making on what we've done, bringing in a cloud-based deep learning engine that's 6 times faster compute for this machine learning in the cloud. And it's the basis of what this Nebula launch is, right? So because we've re-engineered the processing architecture, right? We have a special collaboration with a chip manufacturer for our hardware. We've been given a 6 times performance in deep learning computation. 2, we've architected this unique ultra-low latency global cloud infrastructure, right? So for anything that the firewall doesn't recognize, for anything that seems malicious or suspicious, we have built something out where we can go to the cloud if necessary, get protections back from everywhere because we built it out across the public cloud, right? We're able to send it up, get a result, send it back. We've gotten to a point where we can protect threats in real time and perform deep learning on live traffic. So now a threat hits our firewall, and in any one of these 4 different analysis methods that we've talked about already, right? static analysis, deep learning analysis, signature-based, behavior-based. We're able to get a result in just seconds to our next generation firewall or even our firewall as a service. So just keep this in mind because it's what's going to allow some of the technology I'm going to get into to operate in this way. We have such a performance improvement in this deep learning computation because of the way we've architected our new firewalls and built out this global cloud infrastructure to continually feed data into our firewalls. We're able to stop pretty much everything. And that's going to become a very, very useful when you're dealing with advanced C2 threats, phishing, or threats that can kind of traverse the DNS. So that's where we are now, right? That deep learning ML analysis is being done in real time, operating on live traffic so that if an unknown threat variant gets through, we can perform static analysis, recognize signatures, continually learn as a next generation firewall, and then leverage the deep learning analysis through our global cloud computation and increase compute power to prevent unknown, evasive, and zero-day threats. And that's what sets us apart from everybody else. Someone still leveraging a older next generation firewall or even a ML powered next generation firewall could take 2 days or maybe just an hour or two to recognize some of these zero-day threats that could traverse their network. And we're able to kind of stop in real time because we understand the behaviors. We can run a live simulation in real time to see the malicious behavior associated with it, get verdicts, understand what something is way before anybody else. So that's the big piece of this. If you're purchasing a new firewall or on an existing firewall and interested in upgrading to 10.2, you can take advantage of some of this technology that we're going to kind of get into. Figured I'd just throw this out here, some additional sets of the Nebula features. I'm going to get into advanced threat prevent, DNS security, advanced URL, and AIOps. All really great stuff that become available with Nebula. And, I think you'll kind of see how that new processing architecture we built out, along with that global cloud network, has allowed us to deliver this new increase in performance in security. So advanced threat prevention, right? If you're familiar with our old threat prevention capabilities, right, our old cloud delivered security service, advanced threat prevention is that, but now also using that inline deep learning that we talked about. It can stop unknown C2 attacks in real time. It's the only IPS to stop unknown C2 traffic, and it can stop 48% more than its closest competitor. And its closest competitor was us. In our last release. So I want to make sure you kind of see that this is something that's really built out to take advantage of some of these different components, right? There's a lot of customizable tools such as Cobalt Strike that makes it easy to create and modify payloads. And because we can run payload analysis with no hit to performance, we're able to respond to some of those threats. So it includes all of the industry-leading prevention capabilities that you're familiar with our threat prevention, and then has the additional innovation of our cloud-delivered deep learning, ML-based detection and prevention for C2. So it's really just like your last chance, massive uptick to automate the creation of net new C2 traffic patterns that have been built around getting around traditional signature-based threats. That's what we're kind of seeing. It's easier for organizations or malicious actors to build out those things. So being able to take something that can increase the detection of that C2 traffic and black it out in line, detect it, and take advantage of it is going to protect you from so many different threats out there. So, here's what it looks like. Advanced threat prevention. And I think a common question is if there's a packet that we recognize as being a part of a malicious software, it's blocked in line, right? Only suspicious network patterns or packets that match a predefined criteria are sent to the cloud for analysis. So that's what increased the performance. It occurs while the session is ongoing. So if they get a block action, it'll just block it. The session will proceed so we can analyze the packet. But once we realize that the verdict is malware, the packet's dropped and the session is killed. And then there's no delay or latency or hits. It's milliseconds being able to be validated as it figures out what's going on with this particular traffic. So I mentioned the 48% increase. That's a lot of C2 traffic out there, command and control that a malicious actor could take advantage of and hijack some valuable resources within your network. All right, so DNS security. You may have remembered about a year or so ago, we announced advanced DNS security, but we've actually upped it from last year because we're able to provide 40% greater coverage than even we could then. And what's really important to kind of note about our DNS security is that it cannot be bypassed, right? It's not something that one of our competitors is offering as a bolted-on solution as part of a unified threat management tool. It's built into our firewall single parallel processing architecture. No matter what, we're going to specifically protect against known malicious domains, threats, anything that can be used to abuse the DNS protocol or even DNS traffic itself. Here's all the different things and all the icons with a little star next to them. These are things that only we can protect against. We're unique to Palo Alto Networks, while all of these ones in orange are the new protections we can kind of take advantage of. So DNS is a massive threat vector, right? You know, it's something easy. It's never been easier to bring up and spin up new domains, right? So if you're dealing with a traditional solution, you're going to rely on a database, right, that just kind of maps out which are the bad DNSs and blocks them. So you really do need a DNS security solution that can go above and beyond that. And you need it to be something that you can implement easily. It should help ease out the escalating volume of threats that are going bigger and bigger every single day. So our service, it's firewall attached, kind of like any of our other cloud delivered security services. You don't have to require any changes to your DNS infrastructure, and it works in hand with the next generation firewall platform, as well as our Prisma Access solution or VM firewalls. Essentially, first, we look into everything every type of DNS traffic going through your network to the internet, not just, your sanctioned resolver, but if a malicious actor uses their own resolver, the firewall will check that traffic against our service. Second, the firewall copies that DNS request and validates it against our service. So while at the same time you're saying that DNS query out to a public DNS server, we're going to be able to get a verdict back to the firewall and see if anything malicious is going on the firewall so that you can take action as a result. So we can sinkhole malicious traffic. We can manipulate the DNS response that it's going back to your internal network to make sure no malicious domains or threats that traverse the DNS network are happening as a result. And it's going to help trigger automated policy actions on your firewall that's going to restrict internet access or make sure that there's no east-west movement through the firewall now that something has kind of traversed it as a result. So it's going to provide you 40% more DNS layer threat coverage than other vendors. We're 6 times faster at predicting malicious newly registered domains. And we blocked over 38 million DNS tunnels just in last year. So definitely something worthwhile. I think in the past, if you were looking for a bundle or a recommendation on how to kind of get your security system at large with next generation firewall, you were always recommended threat prevention, wildfire, and more likely than not URL filtering. But I think we're seeing every single day how DNS is a more and more preferred, threat vector, right? Like we kind of already talked about, there's a lot of pieces of it that go into place, and you need to make sure that you're protected on that front. Security systems have gotten better at detecting maybe the traditional domain generating algorithm techniques, but attackers have found ways around this. They're using domain hijacking techniques. They're building out threats in other different ways across this. So if you're not able to secure your DNS, you're not going to be able to secure your network. So yeah, that's kind of the main thing I wanted to point out. All of this is made possible because of those advancements that I already mentioned through Nebula. We understand high reputation domains, already have the ability to block those. We want to figure out the reputations of new domains in real time, and our advanced analysis will allow you to block things with confidence. It's going to have that strategically aged domain detection along with compromised DNS zone detection. Same kind of thing we're talking about. Those DNS packets are sent up to the ML-powered, cloud-delivered DNS security capability, and we're going to use all of these features to figure out whether or not there's something malicious going on with this particular activity. So that leads me into advanced URL filtering, right? URL filtering has for a long time been seen as a consistent way to protect against phishing attacks. And as phishing attacks get a lot more complicated, we have to be a little bit better about filtering out the bad URLs out there. So let's talk about the past, right? Previous advanced URL or URL filtering technologies would rely on just a database that said, here are the bad URLs, block them. And they relied on web crawlers, right? So web crawlers would basically span a website, index a certain URL, and try to figure out if or the URL itself was malicious. So the problem with that is that web crawlers can be beaten by malicious actors. They could serve up some benign content up front that the web crawler says, okay, all good, this is not a malicious URL, and then it actually is. They could delay some kind of Java script or executable that would be found malicious by the web crawler until it's already passed through, or they could wait for user interaction. It's led us to a point where we have a set of problems that need to be adjusted and only can be served with an advanced URL filtering strategy. So the first problem is the rate of new and unknown malicious URLs. They've exploded, right? We have tons of them being made. Databases just can't keep up. It's pretty much free to create a new domain or URL. And then as soon as you create it, it's not in any database that could block it. So that virtually makes every URL a zero-day URL. And it makes every user a patient zero. So being in a situation where you're only blocking known malicious URLs is not good enough anymore. The quality of those URL databases is declining. As I mentioned, vendors can't really rely on web crawling to find malicious URLs anymore. We need to understand is what is going on with live traffic. So our kind of functionality is a little different than what you might see with a bolted on technology. A stopgap measure that might have threat signatures or antivirus or sandboxing, it's helpful, but it doesn't address the fundamental weakness of web security, right? The web-based attacks like phishing or exploits that cannot reliably be detected with any of that technology. We perform analysis and detections on live URL strings, right? With advanced URL filtering, we move to real-time machine learning that analyzes actual web traffic in real time and detects and prevents never before seen threats in milliseconds. So any evasion attempts, we're going to be able to close that window for attackers to be successful and protect against patient zero. This additional compute power gives us the ability to perform full payload inspection and get significantly increased detection power. So you're not just relying on something that a web crawler could kind of take up if a really, really good hacker has built a way around it. It's allowed us to have powerful new detectors with URL filtering that can prevent 90% of the techniques we've seen in new phishing techniques. So with our advanced URL filtering, you get inline protection, the ability to detect evasive and targeted attacks, and you have that cloud native service, right? That cloud delivered security service is continually being updated with information. So you sign up for the advanced URL filtering, it's licensed as an attached subscription to the next generation firewall. And you're able to block malicious URLs in real time and have those innovations for inline protection and detect the evasive and the targeted attacks that are associated with, getting around some previous technology that was used to protect against URLs. So it's really great. It's really powerful. The whole process only adds 40 milliseconds for real-time detection, right? So your user won't experience any latency. We can quickly find out what's going on and get a verdict over anything in real time. So I hope you all kind of understand that and how our inline ML-based detection is looking at the entirety of web payloads instead of relying on different tools to update a database. It's going to help us kind of do the inline analysis without affecting the user experience, thanks to that kind of compute power in Nebula and some of our new hardware. and it's allowed our advanced URL filtering to continually evolve. And because of that cloud native service, it's going to continually scale. So you'll always get the best possible protection against phishing attacks that are out there. I think I kind of already got into how it works, but yeah, I just want to make sure you all can see this. 40% of malicious URLs can only be prevented by real-time analysis, not a traditional database approach. We're stopping 12 million web-based threats a day, and 76% of the threats that we've found were undetected by other vendors for at least 24 hours. That just shows you how quickly you can kind of bring in an advanced security solution and see results right away. So you'll definitely see some of the components of the phishing detection engine that are built into advanced URL filtering here, but please just keep that in mind as you're kind of moving forward, and how important it is to kind of keep staying ahead of attackers through the threats associated with URLs and DNS. All right, so that brings me to one of the last things I want to talk about today as part of Nebula, and that's AIOps. So if you're familiar with our BPA, our best practice assessment for our firewalls, this is sort of a ongoing BPA built into the firewall. It's BPA as a service, if you will. But let's talk a little bit about AIOps. So with AIOps, we're trying to deal with some of these problems that you might be running into as a firewall administrator, right? I think it's presumed that misconfigurations are the biggest risk for an organization. 99% of all firewall breaches through 2023 are, believed to be going to be caused because of misconfigurations. The other thing that could run into a major problem for an organization is a data center outage. That's the average cost of a data center outage based on this research that we have here. So anytime a Fortune 500 company experiences a downtime of 1.6 hours or so, they're losing, if that happens once a week, just 1.5 hours, they're losing $46 million per year. So how do we address misconfigurations on one hand and outages? And we do that through AIOps. So AIOps is about providing predictably better security for configuration, best practices, and then also to deliver insights across all of your deployments. With AIOps, your organization can predict firewall health, performance, and disruptions within one single tool. So it's an awesome way to bring in the operations. And the best part is this tool is native to our firewall. So maybe there are other AIOps solutions out there that can give you proactive response that can help reduce toil and overhead. But because a lot of AIOps solutions out there that are available might be generic in nature and not domain specific, you can't really use it for improving your next generation firewall operations to the best of your ability. So with AIOps, you have a cloud-based module that will continually send your firewall administrators best practices, insights, and predictability metrics, right? It's going to take data from the hardware, from the network at large, from Panorama. It's going to go up to our AIOps cloud where we're going to run our machine learning algorithms for analytics on it. And then that data is going to be delivered directly to your personnel. So you have set out workflows for your firewall administrator to do through a cloud delivered security service. So I'm going to try and give you an example of how this could work, right? For example, let's say you've got your firewall set up, right? And you're maybe using decryption incorrectly. And maybe you also miss turning on an anti-spyware profile in your policies. Nothing wrong with that, but like we talked about, a simple misconfiguration like that could end up costing your company millions. So in that case, AIOps, because it's continually getting good information, good data on all the traffic through the network, it'll notify your network operations team about that misconfiguration, that they're not using the decryption functionality properly, that they didn't turn on an anti-spyware profile that they might have should have. It'll give them then, hey, you forgot about this, it's misconfigured. It'll provide them step-by-step recommendations, a little video on how to fix it immediately, improve that security posture, all in one console. So you're basically getting continual feedback on how your device is configured, you can save times and track your progress. You can continually get better at strengthening your security posture, maximizing your security, and then predict the network security health monitoring capabilities as a result. So it's a really awesome tool. If you are familiar with the BPA, just think of how you could always have a BPA on and getting best practices delivered to you at any time. And the coolest part of this, with Nebula, it's free. The basic version of AIOps is free. There is a premium version, which you can try out for about 90 days up front. But you can continually get this information on recommendations with step-by-step instructions on how to fix it and incorporate it into all your different devices. So you can kind of see here, it's going to simplify the overall kind of capabilities of your organization, your cloud delivered application, and predict some of the firewall health as a result. So I want to make sure that you guys understand how valuable a tool like this can be to an organization for empowering your network security operations teams so they can be proactive with ML powered anomaly detection, get those actionable insights, understand the health and performance of their deployment, and prevent some of the misconfigurations and outages that could cause problems. So just keep these items in mind, right? For strengthening your organization's security posture, for preventing network security disruptions. All of this is kind of capable as part of Nebula at large. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap a little bit earlier than maybe I planned, but I want to give everyone some time to ask some questions and make sure you guys understand the value of Nebula and our new hardware for staying ahead of kind of the threats that are out there, the malicious actors and some of the phishing, C2 exploits that are available out there for kind of your enemies on the market. I think with AIOps, advanced DNS, advanced URL, advanced threat prevent, you can really beef up your security posture and ensure that you're staying ahead of these threats for years to come.